Hey YouTube, it's Grant here. I'm making a video to show you some of my favorite budget cards that are better than non-budget cards. They're just so good, and a lot of people aren't using them because I think there's a little bit of a hive mind thing going on in Commander now with things like EDH Rec, which I love and use. But you can see sometimes um, like a positive feedback loop of like people see a card's awesome and then they want it in their deck and then it goes up on the EDH rec, so more people start buying it, and now something that was $1 is now $15 when really it's just as good as other dollar cards. It's just what everybody's playing, right? And this will help you make your decks a little bit more personal to you, a little bit more customized compared to what you see the EDH dot deck type copy and prints. A lot of these are cheap, and I'll go over them. And I kind of want to do this as fast as I can because I have a little stack of maybe like 15 or 20 cards. But first things first, I want to show you my favorite card. It does not go into cheap decks, but it's just so good that I want to show it to you guys. Now, I want to remind you that I've looked up things like Skullbriar, Slurk, Griswold, Rayhan, Ikrashadiki, all these type of, you could even call them like Voltron-y, like very combat-oriented commanders that get big creatures. None of them. Look this up. Go to EDH Rec and type in Filth and see what decks he's in and how many percents. It's ridiculous considering I run a Marin of Clan Del Toth deck that is optimized. It's a very expensive deck. It's one of my favorite decks. I'm trying to foil it out. It's very good. So I'm not going to run something that is like just like a pet card in it. I want to win with this card, right? So I run this and nobody else does. And let's explain how this works. So in Marin and a lot of Golgari decks, you just dump your deck into your graveyard by only running a very few amount of basic lands. So this is tap, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a basic land, put them into your graveyard, and then put their basic land into your hand. So I'll tap him and sometimes get 20 cards into my graveyard. So very quickly I'll get Filth. Now, Filth says as long as Filth is in your graveyard and you control a swamp, creatures you control have Swamp Walk. And he's got Swamp Walk for 4. It doesn't matter his power and toughness very much because he's staying in the graveyard. And then lastly, I run Urborg. It says each land is a swamp in addition to its other types. So now we've got our entire board as Swamp Walk, and everybody's got swamps, even if they're playing Azorius, right? But the really, really cool part I think about this is how protected this combo is. So unless somebody has graveyard removal and somebody has land removal, it's staying. This combo is staying. It's not like some annoying enchantment, right? So it's a very, very protected combo. And here's a couple situations where you'd see this thing shine. So now I'm playing with my deck. I have a Zoni in the graveyard. I play a Zoni from the graveyard and get 30 or 25 1/1 insect tokens, right? And then my friend notices I have a Blood Artist, and of course I'm playing Sacrifice Outlet, right? So I'm about to sacrifice 25 of these bugs and then do 25 damage. And next turn, I'm going to bring back a Zoni, and then after I sacrifice him, and do it again. 50 damage in 2 turns. Perfect, right? Here's the problem. He sees my Blood Artist, and he's like, I'm taking out that Blood Artist to slow him down. So he exiles my Blood Artist, and now I have 25 1/1s, and I have... I have 25 1/1s and a sack outlet. But with Filth, I can be like, okay, I'm going to just attack. So I can just attack with everything and win by combat instead of by sacrifice, which is really good because in Marin you run a lot of good creatures, but it's not very much a combat-oriented deck. So that having that flexibility is really nice. But here's another thing that I've had happen too, where I attack with all 25 creatures. I still have a Zulaport. Say I have a Zulaport Cutthroat or Blood Artist out. I attack with all 25 unblockable 1/1s, and hell, even my Shieldred and everything I have out that I can attack with. Kakusho, and then okay, I parse out that 40 damage of all my creatures, and then after I'm done with that, I sacrifice my board to my sack outlet and just kill them with Blood Artist because I just doubled the damage essentially. I swung in for 40 and then sacrificed and did another 40. So Filth is an insanely powerful card. It's good to have sitting in your graveyard, and he actually does something. So one of the problems with Hermit Druid is like you use your Hermit Druid, you dump your hand or your deck into your graveyard, and you get things that go in there like Vampiric Tutor or something like Necropotence or something along those lines, right? But you can't use them in your graveyard. This guy's dumped into your graveyard, and he actively helps the board a lot, and he's just from sitting in your graveyard. So anyways, I won't go too much further on that. I just think that if you're wanting to play a graveyard deck and you don't have Filth, pick him up because he's like $1 or $2. You can get him foil for a little bit more expensive, but that's just because he's an old card. But yes, so that's that. I'll move on. Sorry for wasting all that time. Maybe in the comments I'll put, this kind of starts at 5 minutes. So first let's start with red. So in red, I have Goblin War Drums. It says, creatures you control have menace. What's nice about this is it's 3 mana, and it lets all your creatures basically get through unless they're blocked by a huge board. It's really good. This card, Shonda's Incinerator, one of my pet cards. If you're running something like Niv Mizzet, or if you're running something like Vial Smasher, right? So this says, 5 and a red. It costs X less to cast, where X is the total amount of non-combat damage dealt to your opponents this turn. It's a 6/6 for trample, and you'll honestly play it for 1. That's not why it's good, though. Why it's good is it says, whenever a source you control deals non-combat damage to an opponent, Chandra's Incinerator deals that much damage to target creature or planeswalker that player controls. So imagine if every bit of damage you're slinging in your damage slinging deck also had the ability to spot remove problematic cards, right? So obviously, flying is often a problem for people. Just focus on flying. Even if just that, it's just keeping flying off the board to give you more time. Or if somebody's playing something really problematic like a Magus of the Moon or something like that you just don't like, every time you fling damage, you can just boop, 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 poke, spot removal, get rid of the things you don't want. So this card, you can pick it up for pretty inexpensive. I think you can get it for under $1, and you can get like a foil fancy version for a couple bucks. This card, if more people knew about it, would go up in value, but it's been recently printed, so it's still good now, so pick it up now. Lastly, Taurian Mauler. I don't need to go too much into this. I just think it's a really good card, and more people should be running for how inexpensive it is. I think if you're trying to make more budget decks, the fact that this is a 3 to play that fits into any tribal deck that runs red, and obviously between 1 turn rotation can come back as a 6/6. Next turn rotation, more mana has been played. It comes back as a 15/15, depending on how many things people are playing. This is a fantastic card. Moving on, let's go into green, because I only have 1 green card for you guys. I don't play a lot of green, but back when I played 60 card back in the day, I would play Life's Legacy. I had a what's it called? Devotion deck with Aspect of Hydra. So for 1 mana, I would take my 5/5, right? And I'd give it +10/+10 because of the devotion to green. And at the end of my turn, I'd pay 2 mana to sacrifice it to draw 15 cards for 2 mana. Where this is going to shine is in things like Exalted, things that give your creatures more, like artificially more power. This wouldn't be good in something like a Hydra deck, right? Because if you pay 10 mana to get a 10/10 Hydra, and then you pay 2 mana to sacrifice it, then you're paying 12 mana for 10 cards. But what's nice about this is that it's insanely real. It's a crazy amount of card advantage for 2 mana. And yeah, so if you're playing anything that gives like a token deck where you can move tokens around and stuff like that, for example, like the new Vorinclex, if you're going to move those tokens onto an Ozolith and you can sacrifice a creature like that you played for 4 mana, you got a couple attacks with it, and then you're like, you know what, I need cards. I'm going to draw 9 cards. This is a fantastic card. Used to be under $1, and I think now it's probably a couple bucks, but I think if more people played it, it would end up being it might be a $10 card. You know, I don't actually know, but it's so good. It's very good. All right, let's go into white. So here's some of my favorite white cards. I'm pretty sure a lot of you know Containment Priest, but I don't think a lot of you know how it's really inexpensive, and if you deck test with it, you might not end up taking it out of your deck, because people don't realize how much this affects the board until they're actually playing it. And I think that's true of things like with Ashiok, where your opponents can't search their libraries, they can't fetch for fetch lands, and you can exile people's graveyards. I think that once people put this in there, they overlook it, and then when they play it, they're like, oh, this is good. In the same way that like Mother of Runes gets overlooked in white. People know about it, but I don't really see a lot of people playing it. But when you play Mother of Runes, you're like, oh yeah, I wouldn't take this out. So check out Containment Priest. You can get it for $1 or $2. Another really, really good card is Winds of Abandon. So unfortunately, a lot of really good white cards get banned. I've noticed that like Iona got banned, and people don't like land destruction. But white really needs help in Commander. So this is one of those cards that when I saw it, I was super impressed. It's a 2 mana Path to Exile, but you can overload it for 6 mana instead of the 7 mana that Cyclonic Rift costs. And it's a one-sided board wipe with Exile. So this can be an I win the card for 6 mana. I win the game card. So I really recommend picking up Winds of Abandon. When it first came out, I picked up multiple copies because I knew they'd go up in price. And they have, but they're still only a few bucks. So they're definitely a budget like friendly card that's just as powerful as some of the cards that you would see for $10, if not more. And lastly, for white, we have Runetail Kitsune, inexpensive card that when you play this enchantment, well, when you play this creature, it flips almost immediately. So when you have 30 or more life, flip Runetail Kitsune. So you pay 3 mana for an enchantment that says prevent all damage that would be dealt to creatures you control. I love Boros. I play a lot of Boros, and one of my favorite things I've done is played this, then used Blasphemous Act for 1 mana, and just had a one-sided board wipe for 4 mana. And then, of course, for the rest of my game, my creatures were protected as well. So this card is a couple dollars, and I think this is a high-powered... I'm telling you guys, this is high-powered cards for the price that you're paying for them. All right, we've gotten through these. Why don't we go into the multicolored, and we're almost done here, guys. So, Wargate. This is a cool card. Now, imagine you're playing Tulane, or really any green-blue deck that's going to make you crazy amounts of mana, and then somebody says to you, you can play any card in your deck, any permanent card in your deck for just 3 extra mana. Well, when you're running that much mana, it doesn't matter. And hell, you could even pay 3 mana and just get a land, or anything that's 0 cost, right? So for 3 mana and X, it says, search your library for a permanent card with converted mana cost X or less, put it into play, then shuffle your library. Now, if you're playing something like... I don't know, who's a good band commander? Oh, I really like Rafik of the Many. If you pay an extra 3 mana to fish up your favorite equipment card or enchantment to put onto your guy, that's really sweet. So I think this is absolutely worth a card, and it's like under $1. It's super high powered and under $1. These are some new cards. I just thought they were cool. So I do play Boros, and one of the problems I have is like card advantage. And I do also have stuff like Hall of Heliod's Generosity and ways to recur enchantments. So it's 4 mana to draw 4 cards, essentially. You exile the top 4 cards of your library until the end of your next turn you can play those cards. So you pay 4 mana, you might have 2 left over. Maybe you can play one of them, you can't. Maybe goes to your next turn and you have an extra 4 cards. Then after that, whenever you play a spell, you just get a bigger creature. And then obviously if you can recur this is a really good way to get card advantage in Boros. I think it's underrated. It's like foil for $1. And everybody's excited for the new Lorehold command, but I absolutely think this is better. And yeah, so if you're playing, some kind of budget decks and you want some card advantage, that's the way to go. Sorry guys if I'm talking too fast. I figured I might want to speed this along, but honestly, I'll just go through them like normal. So this is 4 mana. It's an enchantment from Kaldheim that says on your first draw step. No, sorry. As the what I'm talking about for these. It's hard to explain, but on your first turn, you do number 1, then second turn 2, then 3. So for 4 mana, you're going to destroy target non-land permanent. Now, if you play stuff like Maelstrom Pulse, it's 3 mana for the same effect. So you pay 1 extra mana to get the same effect. But you also get ramp. Search your library for a forest card, which could be used to get like a dual land, or it could be used to get like a triome. And then, so you get ramp and destroy for 4. You're already like ahead on mana. Then lastly, creatures you control gain death touch until end of turn. Now, it's kind of hard to time this. It's not a bad thing to get on top of it, but I mean, it's like getting it for free. But basically, that's a 2 mana effect in itself. So if you look at this, costs 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is 7 mana's worth of effects, and you can get it for 4 mana. And the fact that you can destroy target non-land permanent is really good. So I think this is a card that people should be using if they're playing this color combination. And then last is Guided Passage. Now this card, if you're in the colors, it says reveal the cards in your library. So somebody gets to look at your entire deck. But an opponent chooses from among them a creature card, a land card, and a non-creature non-land card. You get to put those chosen cards into your hand, and then you shuffle your library. So it's basically 3 mana, draw 3 cards, right? It's blue, red, and green. So the way I see it is like you're not going to put bad cards in your deck, right? Obviously, your opponent is going to give you the worst cards they can. But if you didn't put bad cards in your deck, you're just going to get good cards. And the other thing is this can be used politically. You say to your friend, look, I don't care what land you get me. I don't care what non-creature card you get me. I need this creature, and if you get it to me, I will not attack you with him, and I'll attack Brad over there, right? So this can be used politically. It's 3 mana, and it's like $1. It's really, really good for the price. Like, the way I look at it is like pound for pound, dollar per power. This is probably one of the more powerful cards per penny that you can buy. So worth checking out. All right, all we have left is these small stacks. So Skeletal Scrying. I play Marin. I play a lot of graveyard decks. I think this is fantastic, where you can pay X in a black. And as an additional cost to cast Skeletal Scrying, exile X cards from your graveyard, and you draw X cards and lose X life. So this can be pay 6 mana, draw 5 cards, lose 5 life. It's just a powerful card. It can take up a slot if you need some like card draw in your black deck. This is a good way to go. And if you're playing graveyard-oriented decks where you're filling it up, this is a fantastic one. A lot of people play stuff like Grey Merchant of Asphodel in black and have some life gain as well, so it doesn't hurt that bad. And yeah, I think things like this are better than Phyrexian Arena in some aspects because it's instant, right? It's an instant speed. I don't play Phyrexian Arena for 3, wait a turn, lose a life, and gain 1 card. So it's like I paid 3 mana and a life and had to wait a turn to get 1 card. Or this could be, pay 4 mana, get 3 cards immediately at instant speed. So I think Skeletal Scrying is something that you should be playing. This one's also really cool. One of the things people have been really ranting and raving about recently is the Fierce Guardianship or Deflecting SWAT because they protect your commander, right? Well, there's a 3 mana flash enchant creature, and when enchanted creature dies, return that card to the battlefield under your control. It is 2 and a black, and the fact that it has flash is really nice. But the other thing that's cool about it is, like, say your opponent has a really cool creature that's really problematic for you, but is really wrecking the board for everybody. It would be cool if you could take it and you're running black, so chances are you can destroy it. You can use this on your opponent's creatures and steal their creatures. It doesn't have to be just to keep your creatures recurring. It gives you an animate dead effect and it's only 3 mana and it's at instant speed. So I really think this is something that you should run. I've actually, I might just put this in my really expensive deck that I'm running to. I have a freaking Vial Smasher and Sakashima deck that I think this would actually do really good in, so I might pop it in there. And it's also one of those cards you can get for under $1. All right, just artifact in blue here. So Spellweaver Volute, an inexpensive card to buy, a little bit pricey on the mana cost, but it costs 3, a blue and a blue, and it says enchant instant card in a graveyard. Whenever you play a sorcery spell, copy the enchanted instant card. You may play the copy without paying its mana cost. If you do, remove the enchanted card from the game, so exile it, and attach it to another instant card. So if you're playing a lot of instants and sorceries, right, and you want to get free value off of them, you pay the 5. Only one time you pay the 5. You enchant something in your graveyard, and then whenever you play your next sorcery, you got to play that instant for free on top of it, and then move it on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. So you can just reuse all of your cards that don't have flashback. It essentially gives everything flashback. Fantastic card. Really, really powerful in the right decks. This one is kind of cool. So everybody likes Brainstorm. Everybody likes Preordain. Everybody likes Ponder. So, but for 1, Portent. Look at the top 3 cards of target player's library. Could be your own. Put them back in any order. You can have that player shuffle their library, and then draw a card at the beginning of upkeep. So imagine if you had a Brainstorm, or I guess it'd be more like a Ponder. Imagine if you had a Ponder that you could use on other people's decks too. You can use it to slow down other people's decks. You can help them find a mana. You can do it to yourself, and then of course you get to replace the card with the draw card effect. So this card is really, really cool. I thought it was interesting because you can use it on other people, and especially if they're playing stuff like if they're running Scrying, or if they're running like Sensei's Divining Top. This is a neat little card to play. And lastly, Soothsaying. It's really good because it's 1 mana, right? It's a turn 1 play. It has a shuffle effect, so after you're doing top deck manipulations, you can shuffle or crack a fetch. But for 5 mana, you can shuffle your library, 3 and 2 blue. This thing costs 1 blue. And pay X, look at the top X cards of your library and put them back in any order. So essentially, it lets you manipulate your top deck. And I think if you're playing stuff like Golos, Essica, God of the Tree, anything that you really want to like, or hell, even what's that lady's name? Narset, Part of Veils. This is one of those cards where nobody thinks about it, but having that top deck manipulation before you attack with Narset, just to pay that 4 mana to make sure you're going to hit one of your extra turn spells every turn, because the next turn you pay the 4 again or whatever. This is a really powerful card, and nobody's using it. Last I have is artifacts, you guys. Thank you for sticking with me to the end here. If you keep watching to here, I really appreciate it. Go ahead and hit the like and subscribe if you like. I do Magic the Gathering content. I might splinter off into more D&D content, but this card right here, we all know about Grafdigger's Cage. It costs 1 mana. It says creatures can't enter the battlefield from the graveyard or library. And it's an artifact, but nobody likes having a dead card, and this is expensive. This is inexpensive. It costs 1 mana, and you can tap to sacrifice it to exile each opponent's graveyard. But what's nice is you can pay 1 to replace it by drawing a card and sacrificing it. Nobody likes having a dead card in their deck, so this kind of gets around that. And I play a lot of graveyard-centric stuff. My Boros, my everything. There's no card draw, so I just play things from the graveyard. I usually do it in my my Grixis deck. I do it in my Marin deck. So these cards are really good against people like me, at least. Bag of Holding. This is one of those ones that in certain decks is really good. So it costs 1 colorless mana. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. Pay 2, tap, draw a card, discard a card, But the really good part is pay 4, tap, sacrifice Bag of Holding, return all exiled cards with Bag of Holding to their owner's hand. If you're running a card that's like a wheel effect deck, especially a wheel effect deck, or if you're playing something like Niv Mizzet, or hell, even Rakdos discard stuff like Enge Falconwrath, this can be crazy. You just play it for 1 mana, have it sitting off to the side, don't even worry about the pay 2 and tap, it doesn't matter. And then once it gets to a point in the game where you're kind of low on card advantage, oh wait, I'll just pay 4, crack it, and I just drew 15 cards for 4 mana. So this is one of those cards that if you're playing in a discard-oriented deck and you're not in blue even, maybe you just don't have a lot of card advantage options, Bag of Holding is super underrated and it's like $1. Okay. Another favorite of mine. I wish I would have started with this because of how good and cheap this card is. It's a freaking common, people. So, like, there's a card called Fervor. It's an enchantment. It costs 2 and a red, and it says creatures you control have haste, right? Well, this costs 2 colorless. So, say if you're not in red and you want haste, you're in mono green but need haste. You're in mono white and need haste. How do you get it? This costs 2 mana, people. Tap creatures you control, gain haste until end of turn. So you just tap it every turn that you play a creature. And then obviously it's a 0/4. It's got a fat butt to block you. So nobody can like ping it in early damage. So this Crashing Drawbridge, I have a couple copies. Might pick up more because I'm sorry, but like even if you have like an optimized deck, but you want to get ahead in like a turn early, like say you're playing Kalia the Vast, right? And you can play this on turn 2, play your Kalia, and then she's swinging in the first time you play her. Like, this is really good, and it's 2 mana, so also something I think people should be running. And lastly, Mask of Memory. Probably a lot of you know what this is. It was just recently printed again in Commander Legends. It says, whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, you may draw 2 cards. If you do, discard a card. Really good with stuff like Bag of Holding. It's only got an equip cost of 1, but it's a really good way to get card advantage in non-blue colors. So that's it for you guys. Thank you for checking out my video. It went a little bit longer than I thought today, but I really appreciate you sticking by. If you have any suggestions for cards I should be checking out that cost like under $4 or $5, put them in the comments below. Let me know, because I build decks all the time, and I love collecting and finding new cards. And I'm starting to get to the point where I'm less interested in playing the same decks that everybody on EDH Rec does. I want to just try something different and see if I can find... You know, one of the things I've learned in this is that a lot of the reason cards are expensive is because of hype. I have one friend named James who doesn't use EDH Rec. He never has, but he's played for 20 years. He's played Magic. His decks kick ass. He sometimes comes to the same conclusions on what kind of cards are good to use, but I've also seen him use really strange, weird combos that are cheap, and they're just very good. And that's kind of how I felt about my Filth and Urborg combo. So, yeah, guys. Tell me what you guys are some of your favorite, if you want to, give away some of your secrets, and I'll be happy to hear about them. And I guess last, as a bonus little thing, I wanted to talk about this card. You can just exit here now, but this isn't cheap. Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx. Pay 1. It doesn't come into play tapped, and you can just use it for a colorless, which is great. But even if you're playing 2-color decks like Marin, you can tap, choose a color, add your mana pool equal to the color to your devotion, and it costs 2 mana to do that, plus you have to tap this, so it kind of takes up 3 lands. So let's say it costs 3 mana to get, depending on your devotion, how much mana you get. I run this in my Vampire deck. I'm running Olivia Voldaren, and I also run Cabal Coffers. And even if I have Urborg out and Cabal Coffers and like 6 mana, right, I usually end up getting more off of this. So Cabal Coffers is almost a $100 card. Gaia's Cradle is, you have to have creatures for it to work, and that's like a $1,000 card, who knows by now. And this card is around $25. So I know that's expensive, but I just wanted to point out that this card, and every time I've used it in conjunction with Cabal Coffers and things along those lines, this is better. It's just legitimately a better card. It doesn't have to go in mono black like Cabal Coffers. It can go into different colors. It can go into mono green, mono white, mono red. It can go into 2-color decks as long as you're sticking more to 1 color. So pick up one of these cards, guys. It's fantastic. And again, thanks for watching. Have a good one, guys.